Hey, you've made it to Spry Space, where people managing social media accounts come for community. This year, our focus is social media for good. Together, we can work to make social media a landscape for healthy online communities to grow. Sound good? Then come along with us on the Spry Space podcast, where we share what we know, learn what we don't, and strive to make social media better for us all. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spry Space podcast. I'm Lacey, and this week we enter into the month of April. So it's spring. Happy spring, everybody. This year in April, we're going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And to honor that all month long at Spry, we're going to be showcasing organizations using social media as a tool for their environmentalism. So we are starting off this month with the fantastic Joe McNeil, who's the general manager of Sage Power Authority, which is a public power authority created by the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. Now, Joe is an enrolled member of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe and the president of Standing Rock Development Corporation. He's an activist for Indigenous rights and community economic development, and us Sprites are honored that we get to work with Joe almost every day as we help to build community on social media around Sage Power Authority and their Anpetu Wi Wind Farm project. So welcome, Joe, to the show, and Adrian, who works most closely with Joe. I'm so happy to have both of you here today. How are you doing?
Great. I'm doing great. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. It's a good day. It's a good day to be alive, isn't it?
Always. It's Friday. That's
right. I love recording these on a Friday. I feel like everybody's got just a little bit more pep in their step, you know?
As we're heading out the door. Can we talk about this as we head out the door?
Exactly, right? So, Joe, I'm so excited to have you here. I always like to open our podcast with a question about a piece of social media content that you have seen in the last couple of weeks that brought you joy. So, what do you got?
I'm on IG all the time, and I don't know all the people that I scroll, but the last ones that just cracked me up were film little snippets from Korea about Taekwondo tournaments, and these were tiny tots.
Okay.
Firing off, and one walked over to the other and punched him, and the other one took a step back and fell down. Kicked his feet, and the one who punched him looked at the referee, and then he fell down.
Oh my gosh, it's so cute.
It was hilarious. So, one kid couldn't handle it, and then the other kid couldn't handle the reaction. And, there it was. But to me, it was like, that's today. That's happening so much. Adults are doing this.
Yeah, next time I see you, Adrian, I'm just going to walk up, punch you in the face, and we'll see what happens.
Who knows what will happen? I am in a mood this week, but
I know.
okay.
You were sending me Instagram stories about how important revenge is. So,
yeah, I mean, I feel like it has a bad rap.
All right. Well, let's get to the meat of what we're talking about today, Joe. So, I want you to start off by telling us about Sage. What is it? What's the mission? Let's talk about that project, okay?
Thank you. And I appreciate you guys, asking me to come on and talk about this, particularly as we're looking towards Earth Month coming up.
Yeah.
As Lakota, we come from the large group of Teton or Teton people, and we generally inhabit the woodlands in Minnesota all the way through the plains. And we're large people, otherwise known as the Great Sioux Nation. Sioux was a word that was put upon us by the French, by people who were allied with our enemies, per se. And they said that we were snakes in the ground. So somehow we ended up with that name, inherited that name, and it became, pretty much the title of who we are. So our language, we call ourselves Lakota, or Dakota, or Nakota. There are three dialects of it. And that means ally or friend. So that's how we refer to ourselves, as allies. And I'm very proud to be born into being Lakota. My father, he's black from North Carolina, and my mother and father met in Rapid City, South Dakota. When she was younger, she grew up here at Standing Rock in Little Eagle. And when she was about, I think, 16 or 17, her dad said, "You can't date anybody around here. Everybody's your relative." I went, and I had a few marriages and a few children, my brothers and sisters, and then met my father in Rapid City, and they met doing civil action. So they were going as a minority couple to an apartment and applying for an apartment. They would get denied. A white couple would go in after them, all working for the same cause. They would get approved, so flagged. So that's how she met my father, and then found out about his activism. So they were already activists. So you grow up in this space, and so that was kind of part when you said about my activism as a person of color in this country. As a person, you have to be. It's not really a choice of or another, because you're going to encounter racism or white supremacy through legislation, through social action, through interaction. It's going to happen to you. And how you interpret that and deal with that is entirely up to you with how you've been raised. So all that to say, that's where I came from.
Okay. I love the background. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I've been home here for just approaching 30 years of my life. I moved home when I was 22. I grew up in Hempstead, New York, and Long Island. And I came back to go to school. And we've always come home here to Standing Rock in the summers to visit our cousins and all of our relatives. So I really enjoy being home. And it's a wonderful place. All of our relatives, all of our people, we laugh in the face of despair, and we make the best out of the worst. And we're really rough when we tease each other. And it's because I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday, and it was like, if you can't, it's almost like a sport, teasing.
My son would say the same thing.
Yeah. You gotta learn how to handle it and enjoy it, because it's going to happen. But Sage Development Authority, to that end, was started by Standing Rock Sioux Tribe a few years ago, and it is to be a response to what occurred with us with the Dakota Access Pipeline fight. So how are we going to really address climate change and make a defined answer that not just answers it for us, but for everyone else? So for us, it's creating renewable energy sources that we control as a utility. So the tribe was very specific in creating the Section 17 organization, which is a specific type of organization that's allowed in legislation through Department of Interior and the BIA, that is an official organization of the tribe that has the same rights and traits and values of the tribe, they're being tax exempt, etc., but not in its business interactions. It has full credit to accrued debt, finance, etc., but does not affect the finances or the land of the tribe. So we're in a very unique position, and a very good position. And we have our own board of directors, and our goal and mission is to create a utility here at Standing Rock. So that in its sense, in itself, is a large task. We have 2 counties that Standing Rock sits on, or that are sit on Standing Rock. On the north side is Sioux County, on the south side is Corson County. And we have 2 electric co-ops, rural electric co-ops, that exist in each county. So we have different relationships with either of those. So our relationship with More Grand Sioux on the northern side is much more accessible, I would say.
Okay.
And they're willing to work with us and talk with us about helping us to build capacity, like start billing in certain areas and certain communities, so that we can gain that skill, so we can gain that strength. So that's going to be a large part of the process. I say it's over 10 years when I talk to folks in communities. It's not going to happen in 5 years or happen overnight. We have to build the capacity in order to manage the electric utility here at Standing Rock. So our utility is charged with bringing electricity. Through that, we are building a wind farm, 235 megawatts on tribal land, solely tribal land, which means we have site control over all that. We are surveying for cultural sites and sacred sites, and those are very important to us. We don't want to disturb those sites where people have prayed, that have been prayed on multiple times over the centuries, because those are points of connection to the spirit world. And for us, everything is a church. The whole, the minute you wake up and take the breath of life, that spirit that's in the air, and the spirit is in the sun and the wind, everything is a relative, and that's how we believe. So we transfer that belief into how we're building the wind farm. So
let me ask, Adrian, from your perspective. I know that every time that you walk away from talking to Joe, you text me like, I just love him so much. He's so wonderful. So I just want to ask, from your perspective, Adrian, what has it been like being able to work on the social media side of this Sage project and the Anpetu Wi Wind Farm? What has it been like for you being able to really be a part of this project too?
Well, first of all, we have an amazing team, and I think that's the reason why I love working with you, Joe, is that you have assembled an amazing team around you, and so just everyone is collaborative and listens to everybody, and whenever they're, it's just a great team. So first of all, from team perspective, it's great. When I first, at being an outsider but coming in with my expertise in social media, and knowing that, we were talking about renewable energy, and there's a certain level of what should I say? Just like tension around that in our culture. So I was a little bit, I've always been a little bit just like, okay, when are the trolls going to come? Where are they? I know they're out there. Just kind of bracing for it. But the amazing thing about working on this project is that, an amazing thing about social media and that doing our, carrying out our strategy, is that we are very targeted with who we talk to. Just like going through all the persona work and all the work of the brand, and talking to Joe about the project. I have a very clear understanding of the project, and I think that really helps put the voice and tone into our social media, so that the people that are inspired by it are talking back to us. And in that sense, we haven't really had too much to work with, and to, we haven't had too many problems.
Nasty trolls coming at you. You haven't.
Yeah.
You haven't had as many as you could have.
Yeah, and I think for social media, for sure, I feel like just in life, right, you kind of get what you give. So if you put good, or you try really hard to put good into the world, you're most likely gonna get that back. You're not going to get it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows, but generally you're going to get back good things. So I think that we're very transparent. That's the other thing that I think is great working with Sage, is that we are as transparent as possible. There's no like, oh, here's what we're going to say, and then here's what we're going to actually do over here, which sometimes happens. And we talk about that over and over and over at Spry, that when that happens on social media, you're going to get found out. Someone is going to find out that there's a disconnect, and they're going to come for you. So that is great. That's awesome.
One of the things that I've loved, Joe, with working with you too, is you've described before how you want people to feel when they are taking in your content, when they're coming to your website and that kind of thing. Can you kind of describe that for us here? When people are coming in contact with Sage and with Anpetu Wi Wind Farm, what are you wanting them to feel when they're coming in contact with your content?
Part of what Adrian was just talking about trolls, we don't have much problem with trolls, and probably because I'm saying this, we're going to get this now. But one of the things that I think is really about how genuine we are as not just Lakota people, but as Indigenous people, North and South America, Central America, our relationship with the earth is undisputed. And how we believe about that is undisputed. So when you kind of come at a tribe and it's putting its culture first and how it's going to interact with creating this, it's not going to be 100% perfect because the technology isn't. We're working the best with the tools that we have, to create this type of utility. So, and we're going to be dealing and selling commercial power. And with that coming back, we're going to use that revenue to build those other renewable energy systems for our communities. So our intent is really to help our people. We're a nonprofit, so come at me, bro. What can you say? And then it's just that, we are who we are, and we have detractors here at home too. People don't want to see wind turbines in their backyard. But the real question is, well, what are your solutions then? You can come at me with your problems all day. You can talk about your problems all day. But what are your solutions? Come with those discussions that don't just detract, but are additive, not detractive. But I'm sorry, Lacey, in that thought of that answer, I forgot about your question. Our relationship with the earth. You guys are in Washington State, and I'm out here, and we used to be on the beach, and my mother and I would go to the beach and end up talking spirituality. Why? Because that's where we felt most spiritual, that connection to the water, that connection to the land. And so when you're out amongst the land, you have that innate spiritual connection. Everyone does, and I won't say defy someone who doesn't. And if they don't, I feel sad for them. But it's that connection that we have to the land that makes us who we are. We're all indigenous to some place. Your relatives came from Europe. And there's those places and spaces in Europe that when you're there, you're going to feel something special that no one else can feel because it's in your genes. Same like folks from Africa, folks from Asia, folks from everywhere that they're from have an innate connection to the land. And it's that spiritual root that I want people to feel when they come to our site, when they look at our webpage, when they look at our social media, that they have a place of, okay, good. Now I'm in touch with myself. I can move on. Whatever that is. That's either that sense of peace or meditative space, or that's right, we're connected. And through all the mess and stress and strife that's in this world, we have to get through this place together. And so for us to be able to share that is something that I think is very important. I want to ensure that we're doing that consistently. So our culture, our teachings, everything that we are, our religion, spirituality, societal laws and governance and language and kinship and everything is all one. It's really not separate. So our spirituality defines our relationships, defines how we interact with the earth, how we interact with one another. And the land, not that I'm going to walk on this piece of land, is that I am here and everything that is around me has respect, and we all live amongst each other. That's the earth, the grass, the birds, the plants, and they all have a relationship. And if we study the relationship with the other beings that are here, then we better understand how to leave a better place for our kids. Right now, we're so extractive. We commoditize everything. I seen a post that was really important, is that when people don't respect the forest or respect a forest because capitalization, how capitalization is with capitalism is with the forest. It's only worth something in capitalism when you take everything from the forest.
Mm-hmm. Like a tree is worth more when you cut it down.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that I love that working with Joe on your social channels, but is what you've mentioned, Joe. Can you speak a little bit about the wind? Just the wind and why it's for you. I love when you talk about that.
Well, our board of directors, we have a chairwoman, and that's Fawn Washizi, and she had carried this project for a long time when she was with the tribe. And then she's a school teacher over here at the school. She's teaching third grade. And then our vice chair is Phyllis Young. And Phyllis is very good about, talking about the spirit of the wind. The spirit of the wind is a female. And it brings that spirit to the earth. It has a relationship with the earth. And so it's a dance. Every time you feel it, the wind is dancing with you. It brings the energy. And our belief, from the west come the thunder beings, and with the thunder beings comes the wind. Not all of the wind, but comes the wind. It brings the rain that gives life, that nourishes life. From the south, comes the larger part of the sun, where the sun is brightest during the day, and that gives life and brings life. And there's southern winds that come there too. But these are all gifts that give energy and bring energy. And that spirit that comes with that is what we have a relationship with. It just turned spring a week ago, and we welcome back the thunders. And that happens every spring and fall equinox. Mm-hmm. So we welcome the thunders back because now the rains come, and we have a relationship with the thunder beings, a very respectful relationship with the thunder beings.
You have to.
And we have certain people who have direct relationship with the thunder beings, and they have a difficult life, but their charge is to help people, and use those gifts to help folks get through illness, to get through tough times, to speak with relatives that have passed or coming yet. So there's so much, in our way of life to explain things, but everything's a relationship. Not just a happenstance, like, oh, it's windy, I wish it would stop.
Right.
Not that it's trying to tell you something all the time, but have that relationship.
It's just so lovely that the wind farm, it makes sense. You're putting in a wind farm to, it's amazing.
I think a lot of the problems that lead to us even needing to have conversations around environmentalism have to do with the fact that people have forgotten that they are a part of the earth. They were not taught in their life about where they come from, and they weren't taught. We feel separate and different, and that separateness is really scary. And so that's where this greed comes into place, right? We want to secure our own individuality. We want to secure our own selves, and we want to hoard for our own selves because we're afraid, because we don't understand this sense of connectedness that I think Indigenous and Native people just know and feel and are and be. And I know that I have started following a lot more Native and Indigenous creators on social media. And I mean, from your perspective, Joe, what's it like being able to have so many social media channels now with Indigenous and Native creators that you get to see on a daily basis?
This is so awesome. There's so many so many women led sites that are out there right now talking about crucial social issues and protections of women's rights, which are human rights. And, as we believe as Lakota, the woman is the backbone of the family, is the backbone of the nation, and the home belongs to the woman. Everything that happens in that home belongs to the woman. And when she's done with you, she takes your stuff and puts it outside the door. Everybody knows what's going down, and it is done, And so there's so much involved there. But what's happening is, I shouldn't say what's happening. What I see on social media is so much of a flowering of us being able to express and share what we know as values, that what we have, because we've been, We've been put aside, put underneath, from the time of colonization's first steps here. The goal was to eliminate the native population, the indigenous population, so that taking could occur. Now we're going to build our world on this world. We're going to completely dismiss and discredit what it is that you believe, because it's not our values. As Westerners coming here, it wasn't their values, so they discredited the whole thing. Now, Adrian and I just did a piece. We're working on the Haudenosaunee, talking about how the women in that government played an equal and very powerful role in governance and in the direction in which the tribe was moving. And those leaders, were governing because they could be stripped of their power, basically, and their voice by the women who put them there. So there's those balances that are always there. But in social media right now, everything's coming out. We're teaching more broadly, not just from one tribe, like from Haudenosaunee or Lakota. It's coming from all the tribes. And I think what's really important too right now is there's a recognition that folks that are Mexican or Latinx or Hispanic or any of those words, those are colonial terms. Mm. They have a name, Nican Tlaca is one of them that identifies folks from Mexico, but they're all native nations. The only thing that separated us was the border, and then the Louisiana Purchase and all the Mexican-American War, all these things, but they went through their own colonization and destruction, of their cultures as well. So there's so much that's coming out by real authentic voices from people who are putting this out there. And it's important for us because if we don't get grounded in a thought or belief that puts us in touch with our commonality, which is the earth, then we're going to destroy each other. We're on that road,
Right. Yeah. One thing I was going to say that it reminded me a little bit of, so last summer, during last summer when, there was COVID, everything was happening. The George Floyd was murdered, and then you had all this flooding of social media where you had just people were talking, right? They should have been before. They were before, but it was at the forefront of everyone's eyes. And so there was this kind of a movement or I don't know how to say it, but just like people were encouraged to change up your news feed. Go follow somebody that's not like you. And so I think, Lacey, you've mentioned this before on other podcasts, but just, making sure that the people that you follow don't all look like you or aren't always exactly the same as you, or even maybe think the same as you. Maybe you want to follow somebody who might be a little bit out there, but you just want to, it's good to, just see what everyone else is saying. And so what you're saying, Joe, is, now with social media, before we had TV and popular media, which didn't have any indigenous, content. There was no real way in popular culture to really learn, but now it's everywhere. And so you have no excuse to, to not learn more. And so, over the course of the year, I've definitely, I think it's constantly, for me, I'm constantly unfollowing and following new people, just because I want to know more about other people and how they do things. And I think for environmentalism is the same way. Growing up and going to college, everyone's like, recycle, do all these things, which are great, right? They're great things to do. But they've been developed, these ideas have been developed by a certain type of person. Scientists in the FDA and the EPA and all these in the government have created these systems which are fine, but then it's like, what are other communities doing to work on environmentalism? It's just kind of open your eyes to other ways of doing things and other people. So I think that's one really great way that social media is should be helping.
And what's good is that there's no filter.
Yeah.
Right. About 10 years ago, if we were trying to get something out in a paper or on television or be on the news, there were only certain questions that were going to come at us, and we were able to answer certain questions, and they would edit things out, etc. So with social media, we can say exactly what it is and how it is we feel. Everyone can, and hear that, take what you can that's good out of it and leave the rest. That applies. We're all growing at different levels. So yeah, that was one thing that came to my mind when you were talking about that, Adrian. The filters are gone.
So one thing
not really though, in it, because Yeah, we have a tough time putting what we want out there, and we're not trying to do what other people did. We're just trying to get our message out.
Yeah, we've been hitting up against a lot of things that are causing immense fire in our soul to make huge change in the social media platforms because of what we're coming up against with many of our clients who are primarily serving people of color. So we'll see how that plays out here in the next couple months.
Because the money is driving that conversation and driving or limiting that conversation. How is it affecting someone's bottom line? That can't be the primary focus and force that we govern ourselves with moving into this future.
Right.
Capitalism and the modern industrialization of this world over the last 200 years has got us to a place where we need to stop and change this because we're destroying the earth for our kids, and we're leaving them, a pile of plastic in the oceans and no fish.
Right.
So where do we go from there? So that changing of the whole system, I'm not saying to upend it completely, but we really have to stop and recognize things need to change in a direction so that we can live together.
Yeah, it's interesting from a digital platform perspective too, thinking about, working on stage and creating content, for your community. And we've mentioned before, we've had some challenges with Facebook and technical challenges. And it reminds me a little bit of, do you all remember Vine, the social? Mm-hmm. Do you, Joe? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Vine was very popular with Black creators back whenever it was, back in the day, like what,
5 years ago?
Oh my gosh. And Vine was awesome, and it was free and just very, like Joe said, no filter. And then it went under, no more Vine. And so all these creators who created these huge audiences now had to go somewhere else. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of like TikTok. Mm-hmm. If you remember last summer, I believe the old administration was threatening to bring TikTok down because, well, it was created in China and there's all these, but like if they had gotten rid of TikTok in the United States, imagine all of, indigenous TikTok, that would that would go away. So like, and then it's just very interesting, Twitter, and we have Facebook and Instagram, how the algorithms are built, who they, allow to be seen, and who, if they start noticing like, oh, there's a big community that we are not really sure we want going, it's just very interesting because the people who are in charge of those platforms are basically allowing this content to go out, and if they decide we don't want TikTok anymore, it could go. So it's just something to think about.
One thing that I want to make sure that we get to while we have you, Joe, is I know that you were a part of the No DAPL campaign and part of the protests at the Dakota Access Pipeline. And I mean, talk about that for a minute. What was it like being a part of the group that was really there that caused such a huge movement and support from people who maybe never cared before about anything that mattered to Indigenous people, honestly. And to bring such attention and light to this issue, it really made such a movement in the minds of many white people too, who really didn't care before. What was it like being a part of that protest?
Take a look back at that time and say, when did things really turn? It wasn't when Prince died. Hey. For me, that was a pivotal day.
Aww. Yeah.
But people had a voice and could really stand together. It was a real example in this country that nowadays we need to do this. Yes. And people came to do it. And it wasn't just one group of people. I mean, people came from around the world, to stand with us. And we got started with that here, with kids. The kids started that. They started running. We're going to raise awareness. We don't want this pipeline in the ground, because we're all kind of like, what do we do? This thing is happening to us. They could have did this north of Bismarck, and now they're doing it to us, so they made that obvious first choice. It wasn't good enough for a white community, dominantly white community, and the capital of North Dakota. But it was going to be okay to put it right north, exactly north, 1 mile adjacent on our tribal homelands, treaty lands, just north of Cannonball. My wife's from Cannonball. That immediately hit home, all my relatives in Cannonball and here at home. Everyone here was a part of the camp, was a part of NODAPL in one way or another, whether you liked it, whether you didn't. Everyone went. And what was great about it too was that people from around the world came. So a lot of our kids that would never get to see folks unless they took a trip to Minneapolis of a different color or a different ethnicity got to see folks because they came and they brought people to bring their traditional dance and bring their culture to respect us and respect what was happening. And so they presented themselves in an honorable way and to stand with us and stand for the water. It all focused around that, just the simple thing of protection of the water and our lives that were being so obviously and expressly threatened and still are being threatened by this pipeline going into the river. But that was a real spark. That was a real spark that said this can happen everywhere else. And so went up the call for all the pipelines that are being built, and exactly how many pipelines are in the United States. It's almost like the interstate system. The pipeline system is that vast. And so all of the pipeline breaks and environmental disasters that they cause, and people don't have a voice through this pipeline construction. Even white farmers were against this because they didn't want it to go through their land, but they had eminent domain put upon them, and they protested with us as well because they didn't want it either. So this issue crossed a lot of different sectors of society, as it went down, and still does, So I think it was really the clarion call for this day and age to say environmental rights, but the rights of people over profit need to have a primary voice everywhere. And that's where not to discredit anything else that happened before, but this had a certain element to it, and that was social media. That was social media. So before, when Martin Luther King had started to march, it was television.
Mm-hmm.
My father and his friends sat down at a Woolworths counter, it was newspaper. Newspaper filmed them, took a picture of them as they came out of Woolworths. And that sparked the movement, one of the larger parts of the civil rights movement, through the South and through the country. So there's something with technology and the timing of things. It just happens to happen that way. And so I think there was a real confluence there, of one, it happening in the first place, two, our kids starting this movement in the runs, and then everybody coming. When everybody first started to come, I was here, working with Standing Rock Development Corporation, and keeping these businesses alive and afloat and trying to make these things happen. And driving by there, started to see people I had not recognized, sitting on a fence line, looking to block bulldozers going in and out of that location. And I was like, oh my, I got to work still, but I need to bring something for these kids to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my daily, bringing stuff in. Everybody started bringing stuff in, and then it was, all right, what can we do? We stayed all night, all day, all weekend, through the holidays. I remember we had Thanksgiving dinner. It was like, okay, great, let's eat. Everybody's going to the hill. Let's go. Gone. My mom was like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. And she was there with a cigarette. What are we doing today? Hobbling along, and there was so many grandmas there and grandpas there, but so many grandmas there, holding it down, feeding people. There was so much work to do. The community that came of that, had so many different groups that were there and had, I wouldn't say different agendas, but they had different ways to express how they wanted to protest. Some wanted to be very active, in your face. Us here at Standing Rock, we were of a peaceful protest mind. We're going to stay, make our presence, and it was a prayer camp, etc. and there were folks who wanted to have more direct action, and they went and did, so everyone had their own level that they were acting at. Some agreed with how that was happening, some didn't agree with how that was happening, but it happened. And it was for social media to put out to the world without that filter, so
It
it was
was, yeah. Sorry, Joe, to interrupt. But I remember, I did not. Well, I did not go. But I remember when that was when that was happening. There was news. It was in the news. But it was also, what was interesting about that is that there's always kind of like what the news will portray and report on, and kind of what that was what's going on here. They have reporters and video journalists and all that, and then you had the people, what's actually going on social media. So you had this like two ways of looking at it. And then I remember everyone was checking into Standing Rock, even if you were in here in Washington, you would check in, because with Facebook, you don't actually physically have to be somewhere to check in. And so all of a sudden, I remember my newsfeed was just flooded with all these people checking in to Standing Rock when they were actually just here in Washington or in Oregon or wherever. And what's so funny about that is it's like that was completely viral. I mean, I heard about that before it was in the news. And probably the reason why it was covered in the news was because of all these people, this huge momentum. And when we talk about social media networks and the power of networks, it's like, I teach social media at a local community college, and I talk to my students about it. And, think about myself, if I have 800 friends, right? And those 800 people have 800 friends, and those people have 800 friends. And you think about, again, that is why social media is so amazing and awesome, is that huge momentum can happen overnight so quickly. So I remember that. It was fun. It's a great example.
So one of the last questions I think I want to ask before we get into our closing question is, if there are other people, especially through this, let's say this month of April, since we're talking specifically about environmentalism this month, who want to use social media as a tool to further the cause of environmentalism, what kind of advice do you have for people who want to use social media as that tool? What can we do to bring people together and really care for the earth the way that we need to be?
Is make sure you have a personal relationship with the earth. Make sure that, I shouldn't say make sure, but explore what is your relationship to those things that are crawling underneath your feet, that are walking next or flying next to or swimming next to your house. What are those insects doing that are around your house, and what's your relationship with them? Are they just something to be disposed of, or do they have a right to life and the right to live? I'm one too. I see a roach, I step on it, but it's not like, and I'm going to step on everything else in the house and everything else in my yard. I'm going to devoid everything of life, and put what I want to put on there. What's my relationship with the world around me? So I would ask people to do that first, is to find out what your relationship with is and grow that relationship, just like you grow a relationship with anyone else. Grow that relationship and learn what it's about. Find the beauty in everything that's around, because it's all so beautiful. Whenever I get depressed about something's tough, I look up or I look out or I look down, and there's Tunkashila, there's God, that give us this planet, and all the things that are so monumental about ants.
Yeah.
These guys have been doing it for millennia, for millions of years. Ants have been on the case. So there's so much to wonder about and respect. So when we think about this planet, we are such a small part of it, and we need to remember that, because there won't be anything left for our kids to explore or to wonder about, or to have that same feeling, with that spiritual connection. Our spirit is the same spirit that everything has a spirit. All the cows, unfortunately, that are getting slaughtered and eaten on a daily basis, they feel something. They have relationship, they feel pain, they have that. And so everything does, and we can't just dismiss it and toss it aside. So when you're putting your social media out there, think about that, your relationship and how you want to express that relationship so that we can maintain and get through this crap that we're in now so our kids can have a better place to live. We might not see it, me, all of us, but our kids may see it. Their kids hopefully will get to enjoy a rebuilding of a world that has a sense of balance with the rest of the world, eat better, feel better, all those things, and have better relationships with everything that's here.
That's beautiful, beautiful advice.
Not to be kumbaya, but I'll go out and I'll hunt, but I'm not killing everything that I see, and have that prayer and that respect for what it is that, that I kill so that my family can eat and that everyone else can eat. And it's that relationship. So anyway, It's all about
that's beautiful.
Don't be crying.
The last question. All right, well, let me check you for a second here before I let you go. So I always like to close asking a little bit about our personal relationship with social media, okay? So it's all well and good for us to spend our time putting out good content into the world and trying to do good there, but it's a whole nother thing, this intimate relationship that we have with our devices and with the social media platform. So Joe, how you doing with social media? How's your relationship with social media as a whole?
I relay everybody's good stuff. Resend, repost.
I get messages from you.
Some people would think that I'm a woman because I'm kicking out a lot of stuff on female stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's good stuff.
You are a wonderful feminist. It makes me so happy.
So, yeah. And I mean, there's times I'll put something out there, but I just try to, I don't know, when I put something out, it's either got to be really beneficial for people's, spirit to help people grow and see a little bit of each other. But I love the funny stuff.
Hey, you shared one of my posts for the first time, and I was like so honored. I was like, oh my God, he shared something from my channel on his. I was like, yes, I've done something noteworthy.
Now you're going to be like, Joe won't stop. Well, let me create his own stuff.
Just look out, because part of our social media plan for Sage moving forward involves Joe on video talking a lot more.
Good.
Because he's so delightful and kind. And so, yeah, we're going to have a lot of practice, Joe.
Well, if those of you listening want to hear more from Joe, every month on the Sage Power Authority Facebook page, we put out content about dialogues that Joe is often leading. But Sage is putting out dialogues at least every month where they're bringing in other people, Indigenous, a lot of them. I loved the content over the last month that talked about the intersection between the Indigenous and Black communities. So there is consistent content coming out with Joe's sweet, sultry voice, often leading the conversation, that any of that content is going to help you feel more connected to the earth. It is. And hopefully if we all could feel that a bit more, like you say, Joe, then environmentalism even wouldn't have to be a conversation, so.
It wouldn't be separate from our lives, but upcoming on Anpetu Wi Dialogues, we have the 4 chairmen of the tribe, that are still here. We lost Jay Taken alive a few months ago, and he was a very, very powerful, humble. I would say humble, really humble. His humility, the power was in his humility and his wanting to share our culture and teach. And I miss him. And his wife, they passed away with COVID. He was a chairman, but we have the 4 other living chairmen, to talk about renewable energy, because we've been at this for a long time, and, we're really making it happen now. So what occurred then for those guys, to break through to where we are now, what's their hope? What would they like to see, for development here at Standing Rock?
So check out Sage Power Authority on Facebook if you want to follow along with that dialogue and any of the other ones that Joe and Adrian are putting together here and the rest of their team over there. Any closing thoughts before I wrap us up?
I appreciate this time. It's always great to talk with you guys. It's been fantastic relationships from when we started.
I agree. From the very first time, I agree.
And we'll have to have you back on the podcast, Joe, when our social media is even more powerful, bigger. When we start to take over the world, we gotta, get your hot take on how social media is running for you. So
I will have been using Rogaine by then. You'd be like, Joe, where'd the grade come from? Oh my God.
Maybe you can be an influencer for Rogaine. We'll get you some ad dollars.
All right,
Sorry.
that's enough of that. Thank you, Joe, so much for your time. Adrian, thank you so much, of course, as always. And those of you listening, we appreciate you. We hope that you can find ways to feel more connected to the earth, to your brothers and sisters, to the other living beings, to the ants crawling around your bathroom floor. Okay. All right. Have a great day, everyone. And we hope that you will keep learning. We will talk to you soon. Bye.
See ya.